120 Pod. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I'll be talking with Ciaran Staunton, president and founder of End Sepsis, the legacy of Rory Staunton, which is a nonprofit organization that was founded after the devastating and preventable loss of Orlaith and Ciaran's 12-year-old son, Rory, to sepsis in 2012. End Sepsis is a patient and family-led community across America and around the world fighting for improved hospital safety measures and infection education for adults and children, founded to prevent needless deaths like Rory's. Shortly after Rory's death and vowing never again, the Stauntons worked with Governor Cuomo and New York State Department of Health to pass Rory's regulations in 2013. Rory's regulations was a mandate for all hospitals to develop protocols for swift sepsis recognition and treatment. And in 2022, the New York State Department of Health reported that Rory's regulations had saved over 16,000 lives over the first 5 years between 2015 and 2019. And a study appearing recently in JAMA found that children who received the sepsis protocol within 60 minutes of being evaluated in the emergency room were more likely to survive sepsis within 60 minutes. Fast, swift diagnosis and treatment saves lives for everyone. Encouraged by the results, the Stauntons have taken their battle now to the federal level with the recently reintroduced, I might add, of the Bipartisan Sepsis Act, S1929, S1929. I will put a link in the description box. It's a bill that is co-sponsored by Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, Senator Susan Collins of Maine, and Senator Andy Kim of New Jersey. Ciaran, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. The 120 podcast with Jackie, and I have here with me a very special guest, Ciaran Staunton, Rory's father, and some of you may be already familiar with the foundation that he started. He and his wife Orlaith, and they started End Sepsis. They have been non-stop sepsis advocates ever since losing Rory to sepsis, and so we are going to have a conversation today with Ciaran about Rory, the Sepsis Act, and where things are right now and where they are moving forward. So I want to thank you all for joining us again today. Thank you, Ciaran, for being with me today. And like I said, this is going to be kind of difficult, very difficult, but I want, when we lose children, you want people to know what they were like, and I would like you to tell our listeners and our viewers about Rory and his interests and, you know, what kind of a kid he was and what happened.
Jackie, thank you very much, and thank you for doing this. You and I belong to a club that we don't want any listener to join if they're not already in our club. We have buried our children. We didn't lose them. They didn't disappear. They were robbed from us. They were snatched from us. And in most cases, they were preventable, those snatches. And when we go along and we say, we have buried our children, and they were snatched from us, and had we known then what we knew now and after the fact, that was all preventable. Everyone describes their own child as being wonderful and beautiful. Rory Staunton was once described as a fine young man. Wasn't it a wonderful way to someone to describe a neighbourhood child? He was very, very happy. He was always happy to meet people, and he was always very kind. He was 5'9" when he died, yet only 12. He was 160 pounds. Beautiful, big, broad smile, great shake hands, and he'd go to everywhere. In school, he was 1.5 feet, 2 foot taller than any other kid in school, and when the new child came into the classroom, he took him under his wing. Rory protected everyone against the bully because of his height, embraced the new child. There was actually a lovely video there where there was a Japanese child who had been just over some time in the class when Rory died, and he posted a video with Rory and some music. Rory stood up to campaign. He had campaigns about saying no to the various words and words that shouldn't be used and inappropriate words. And he started a debating team in his school, and he set it up. And one evening, the teacher came back. He said Rory brought home the gold and the silver, and concentrated on his debate, and loved his relations, his cousins, and travelling. And he had travelled quite a bit in America. He had travelled quite a bit around Ireland. Loved airplanes. At an early age, he bought a simulator. And if you said, well, I've never been to X island of the Caribbean, he'd say, I think that's the one where you got to fly in very low over the ocean. Or if you mentioned Croatia, he said, you have to fly in very tight because you drop, the mountains are there and you land over and you drop all of a sudden to land. So you get a bit of a shock. So wherever you would talk about, he would say, let me go back and I must check that out. I think this is the case. And he'd come back and say, Jackie, I just landed an on a simulator, and he'd tell you what airport he landed at. He also loved international affairs. His favourite TV, well, apart from, we will say, Simpsons and that, would have been CNN. And he was a big follower of North Korea. And after he died, we found a letter on his computer that he'd sent to the then North Korea leader and said, I'm in school, I'm in high school. I'd like you to reply to my letter. I have noticed that you have spent X amount on billions on weapons of mass destruction, and yet you have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of your people are starving with hunger. They have no food. Please reply to me and tell me how you can justify your actions. And he went through the UN, found out what the North Korean representatives were, and wrote the letter to them. That was at 12.
A 12-year-old.
12-year-old.
Wow.
Basketball, fanatic, Boston Celtics. He followed me on that one. He could have played basketball if he wanted. He was tall. He played a bit and that, but he came to Ireland. He watched Gaelic Irish national football, and he was the light of our life. Himself and Kathleen were the best of buddies. I often describe them as two unindicted co-conspirators.
I love that.
They plotted, they planned, and 10-year-old Kathleen buried her beautiful big brother after the basketball games. When she'd finish, he'd run on and give her the big hug, the big brother hug, and look out for him. And she was also good at looking out for Rory. Rory was playing basketball in school one afternoon and jumped and got the ball and got a cut on the bottom of his arm. And the gym teacher at the time, instead of sending him to the school nurse or washing the wound, she put a Band-Aid on it. Nothing else, just a Band-Aid on it. And putting on that Band-Aid now, she sentenced him to death. Because that evening when he came home, he had a cut or a Band-Aid, and Rory said about it, but he caught the ball. That's what counted. Yeah. That was Sunday. He was throwing up, and the next evening he was throwing up. We brought him to his paediatrician, and she said he was a bit of a flu going around, and sent him down for rehydration. And the hospital we went to looked at it and took a lot of tests and blood tests and sent him home. And the next day he was very sick, and we kept on to his paediatrician. We can't get liquids. Rory wouldn't even watch CNN, and that's how sick he was. And we kept saying, and he had pain in his leg, and we had mentioned that to the paediatrician. He had enough pain in his leg and that, and she was just kind of dismissive. And the next evening his body started turning blue blotches. We called him again, and we brought him back into the hospital that released him. All hell broke loose. People came running from everywhere. It was like a scene from a movie. And we had him in, and doctors came over, and one was talking before they gave him his medication, and questions, and what day is today, a couple of things, and they said, who's the president of the United States? He said, Barack Obama. And I said, who's going to be the president for the next 4 years? He said, Barack Obama. Those are the last 2 words Rory ever spoke. Wow. He put him into a coma. And that was Friday evening at 7 or 8 o'clock. And at 6:36 on Sunday evening he died. Our beautiful, big, blonde, red-headed boy was the colour of my jacket. The skin had gone blue from head to toe. You wouldn't recognise him. That beautiful boy, Rory and I came in and said goodbye to him. He was still lovely and warm. The nurses tried their best. The priest came in and blessed him. And, when we said goodbye to our son that Sunday evening at 6:36, we lay beside him, a lovely, lovely, soft blonde hair.
That's something no parent should have to say.
No.
No.
Totally preventable death.
Right.
No people should have to say that either.
Because you took him in several times, right?
We took him in beforehand, and then I don't want to get too far ahead, but they'd taken bloods from him, ordered them stat, and released him before they'd even checked his bloods. Or the doctor didn't say, I ordered them blood stats, what's the story on them, what's happening? Or, we'll tell you later about Parents' Bill of Rights, is that they should have told us that, we've taken bloods, the reason we took bloods is this, and call us back, or we'll call you back as soon as they come in. Now, when his bloods did come back and they saw them, Rory was still in the hospital when they were read, but the person who read the bloods didn't report back to the doctor that ordered them. There was no communication.
I was about to say, so it sounds like there was a big communication breakdown. There was no connection.
Doctors differ, patients die, but communications lacking, children die. And so they whenever they came back, they were filed there. Whoever read them, and there was never any more about them until Rory was dead and was dying in the hospital or whatever. Someone started calling about them. And he was a flashing light for sepsis the first evening we went to the hospital. A flashing light. His stats are all there for any medical person from Northwell or anyone else will tell you. All Rory's stats on that fateful evening when he first went in before he was released. Had he been held that evening, anyway, had he, as you and I will, if only, you and I will spend the rest of our lives saying is only, if only, and all I would say if only, if only.
So this was 2012, right?
Yeah.
And definitely no protocols, did they know that he was septic?
They didn't the first night because he had all the signs. We never heard the word sepsis, Jackie, until Rory was dead and remains had left the hospital.
Okay.
No doctor ever mentioned it to us. While we were all around the hospital and they were trying, the second night he was there was nothing mentioned to us about sepsis. And then after he died, when we heard sepsis, we went on the internet. The internet was silent on the word sepsis. We went to the CDC website under the letter S on their A to Z. Nothing about sepsis. Absolutely nothing. Here's another, I sound like the broken record. At that time in America, sepsis was killing 270,000 people. When Rory died, there was 270,000 other Americans died that year from sepsis. And yet, on the CDC website under the A to Z, there was nothing about sepsis. And, when we went to the CDC headquarters, Orla and I we met with Dr. Tom Frieden at the time in Atlanta. And we went through this whole security place and we got a meeting and we were waiting in his office and they said, the doctor will be with you shortly. In the meantime, read some, and they handed us a couple of bits of paper and brochures to read about obesity, fat, salt, smoking, you name it. There wasn't one piece of paper in the CDC headquarters about sepsis. The only paper in the building that day was what Orla brought with her, and she presented some stats and some facts that she had put together to Dr. Frieden. That was the only paperwork in the whole CDC network in the world. That was in 2012. Now, when CDC finally did put it on, and I credit where you always have to credit where credit is due, when CDC finally put sepsis on their A to Z, Dr. Tom Frieden tweeted that evening, "I promised Mr. and Mrs. Staunton that I would put this on our website. It will be on our website, and today it's already up there." So he did, but I want to assure you of something, is that we had to push and push and push. We did we did an event on Capitol Hill where the CDC had been testifying. We got a whole event about sepsis, first ever hearing in the United States Senate. No one had heard of it. We got a hearing, and the CDC people left the event before we even got to testify. They just got up and left the event.
It's frustrating. You had to be so frustrated, you and Orla.
There was no door open to us. No matter where we went, there was no government agency. And you'll see in the movies where someone says, "Oh, I've been waiting to see you and come in and we make all this happen." That doesn't happen in real life.
Yeah.
We had to go to CDC, CMS, every agency, anyone we went to see. With the exception of, we'll say, when we first started out with Governor Cuomo and Commissioner Shah in New York, we talked to them about them later on, and Senator Schumer and Congressman Crowley, some people like that who were wonderful above and beyond. But when it came to, I've often said, we had to kick every door down in the United States government. Now, people come along and jump and say, "Well, we did something together," and that was, there was no one there before us. No one had put the shoulders to the door before we came along. We actually, because, as we were trying to explain to people and everyone's talking and busy, there's a graph on our website that shows what kills Americans. And we have AIDS down here. So we actually drew up the graph. We got it made, designed, and we started handing it out to people all over the place. A colour graph. Sepsis is up here. Various cancers are down here. AIDS, thank God, is way down here.
Yes.
We was handing to people. How come we never heard about sepsis? Well, and one of the things I get very angry with, I think, was with one of the agencies when they said, "Well, you should meet up with other families and spread the message." And we said, wait a minute. Why is it left to those who have buried their child to have to go and do something about this? Isn't that the role of government? Shouldn't government be doing this? Not suffering families. We bury our child, we buy our coffin, and then we're sent out to save Americans. That is not the picture anyone thinks should happen in any society.
No. No. It's after the fact, too, that all of these deaths were already occurring when Rory died.
Yes, 270,000.
Right. And it just blows my mind that, that this wasn't on the radar of these agencies long ago, that, there seems to be no answer. That's one of the very frustrating things, that there's no answer as to why it wasn't even recognized before, especially as a pediatric thing. Because pediatrics, now, hindsight, 2025, we know, look for, a child turning blue and the mottled skin and the things that you saw with Rory.
Yeah.
And they know that, hospitals know that, pediatrics know that now, but why not then, I guess, is what I always ponder.
Goes back to if only. If only.
And children die of sepsis, 6,800 a year, right?
Largest killer of children in the world. Largest killer of children
Yes.
in the world.
Right.
Most of them preventable deaths.
Right. Because children are so susceptible anyway to infections.
We didn't know that there was something that we had never heard of that could kill our child. we have brought them to all their tests. We had wonderful doctors. We gave them all, got all their vaccinations. We got everything. When Rory was bad that evening, Orlaith checked him for meningitis, stripped him down for a bug bite, you name it. There was nothing that we hadn't heard about that Orlaith didn't look about. We had never thought there was something other that could have killed our child.
Yeah. And so you were starting with the CDC. Was this around the same time you were also working with Governor Cuomo and getting
We had started with Governor
Department of
Cuomo.
Health?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was interesting because we met with Michael Dowling at North 12 Health, and they have the gold standard. And we, from talking to him, here's the interesting thing is that if Rory had been sent to the hospital he was born in, he'd be alive today. Because the hospital that Rory was born in was one of Northwell Health's hospitals. They had sepsis protocols at the front door. So we were sent to Hospital A down here by the paediatrician, and they didn't have them. And they had some kind of sepsis things, but they weren't mandatory. And when we met Michael Dowling, we said, well, why should this be the luck of the draw? And that will always go from coast to coast, that anyone driving down the road in the evening with their loved one, if they go to Hospital A, they may have sepsis protocols in place. Hospital B may not. Our paediatrician sent us to her hospital, which was the wrong hospital for us, because our son is dead. So we have said, well, why? You know, the old thing on, there ought to be a law, right, saying that all hospitals must have a system in place, mandatory for protocols, not if you feel like it or feel good factor. So we then met with Dr. Shah, he was the New York Health Commissioner, and absolutely wonderful gentleman, and a real gentleman. And he brought all the various hospital groups around. And I'll never forget that evening. I'd never met him before. And he had all the hospitals and the lobby groups. And there was, we don't need a jet and we don't need this. And there was one lobbyist group and the woman was very active. Why, we're all doing fine and we don't need, because he brought in people from other states and from Northwell. And we don't need people coming in to tell us how to do our job and all that. And Orla just turned around to the lobbyist woman and said, well, if it was your child, how would you want that child to be treated? The woman got angry and said, well, this has nothing to do with my family. Hello? What do you want? So anyway, when it was all over, Dr. Shah just got up and he said, I want everyone to write down the number 25. I want you to write it down. 25 is the most important number I've heard today, he said. He said, and never forget, he said, Mr. Staunton said earlier that he lost 25% of his family to sepsis. That is wrong. That is too high a number. As of now, I want to announce that we are making sepsis protocols mandatory. The governor will sign, at my recommendation, an executive order, not legislation or nothing on through Jim. We are doing it via executive, that every hospital in New York State will have to have sepsis protocols in place.
Wow.
That is what is called
that was
profiles in
Dr.
courage.
Shaw.
Dr. Shah, he's on our board of directors now, and he's a wonderful gentleman, and he pushed it. We faced down the lobby groups and other groups, and we met with everyone, and we have now, I may be jumping ahead, is that in 2022, New York State did an evaluation of Rory's regulations on sepsis. And in the first 4 or 5 years, Rory's regulations had saved 16,000 New York people who would have died from sepsis had it not been put in place. So here's when someone says we need to be moderate, or we need to in some way ease up on the pressure and maybe put a voluntary on others. To what? How many of those 16,000 people who lived would have died if this hadn't been a strenuous activity? If we had said, well, let's compromise and let's maybe not make it as something. And now, by the way, they all love it. The organisations that lobby against it that time are all in favour, because we have met the people. not all of them, obviously. We met many of the people and moms who said, Roy's regulations saved my child, or saved my father, or saved my husband. And we have met some of those people. So when we go speaking about state protocols, national protocols, we're angry that someone might say, well, wait another while. Okay, so 4 million Americans have died since Rory died from sepsis. At what stage do you say this is a crisis? At what stage do you say no more wishful thinking and no more saying let's look at this and let's say we must arrest this killer in our midst?
It's not rocket science either, right? These protocols. Could you explain to our listeners what are the protocols that New York State put into place
Well,
and that are, should be led at a national level?
I think the most important thing is that, and one of the things that was brought back in Rory's law, which was after Rory's regulations and other, is that every medical professional who's retaking their license, and this is very important, and this was a law that was put in some years after Rory's regulations, must also study sepsis. You must have a study sepsis. So it doesn't matter if you're 30 years a doctor or a nurse or a medical profession, before you renew your license in New York State, you must go back and you must study and you must say, I have taken this paper on sepsis. I know about sepsis. Because a lot of people say, well, we didn't learn about it when we left. So I think the most important thing is that every hospital, you see, when the word went out to all the hospitals, we are now, and by the way, there wasn't, when Roy's regulations were put in, they weren't told you must do it yesterday. It was eased in. There was no gun at people's heads. It was saying, and they gave them, we'll say, 12 to 24 months, and then they asked to maybe extend it a while more to get other hospitals to catch up with. No problem. The main thing is they're all working towards it. They all know that it is. And I think that's what is important in states, and that's why now that we have the federal legislation, is that the word is going out to all hospitals across the United States. Sepsis protocols and sepsis awareness and sepsis education and all that is coming down the pike. Get ready for it. Train in the colleges. It's like years ago when they were doing the safety belt laws or any other safety thing. You know that this is coming. The car manufacturers had to put safety belts in cars because they knew it was going to be the law everywhere eventually. And it wasn't like wishing it away. So hospitals are saying, and like one of the things is that a hospital that Rory died in had this thing, well, we had sepsis watch in our hospitals. Yes, they did. But they didn't have it until you went into the ICU with it. And by the time you went to the ICU with sepsis, you didn't have much chance of coming out the other end. Sepsis protocols have to begin inside the front door. Because the other awful myth was, Jackie, that sepsis is something that's picked up in bad hospitals. And we said, whoa, hold on a minute. 88% of people who died from sepsis had it when they walked in the front door of that hospital.
Right.
So that can be arrested at the front door. Michael Dowling and Northwell and Intermountain and all those people around America who have cut the sepsis fatalities huge have said, we'll catch it at the front door. And with sepsis protocols or a set of those guidelines which say, listen, we must look at it. We must identify it. We must be on the lookout for it. And we must save the life. Because the 8% per hour that the body starts to fall into beyond the no return is starting, if you don't get it in time, broad-based antibiotics, and move on it then. And once that starts and they go on the sepsis watch, they're now in the process of saving someone. And that's what Northwell are doing. That's what Intermountain have done long before it came a law. Because it is also interesting enough is that Dr. Martin Doffler, who's on our board, who was for years with Northwell, said how a sepsis protocols in a hospital will actually save a lot of money. Because when someone comes back in with sepsis or otherwise, they have to go into the ICU. Some insurance companies will not pay any more on readmittance and what it costs them. So he is saying is, if you check it at the front door and you rule it out or rule it in. Our very first brochure was rule out sepsis, because the hand wringers will say, oh, it could be something else, or it's not easy to detect. It's very easy to detect if you're ruling it out.
Do all the testing first and
At the
rule it
front door.
out.
Yeah,
And
at the front door.
I've suggested that when I give a sepsis talk, I will tell people, ask what they have done to rule out sepsis, so that what they've tested for and what they're looking at, and have that conversation with whoever the providers are as
Could
to
this be
why.
sepsis? Could this be
Right,
sepsis?
right,
That's it. Have you ruled out
yes,
sepsis? And I don't care how smart the visiting physician or otherwise is. Now, the sepsis fatalities where were there when Rory died at 270,000 is now up at 350,000. So there's obviously a lot of smart people getting it wrong.
right,
You know, the AIDS graph went down like this. Other graphs are going down like this. The sepsis graph is going up like this,
yes,
soaring.
right. And I mean, infection and infection prevention, we still need a lot of awareness around that, and education and treating infections. Like you said, Rory's cut, really should have gone to the nurse's office,
Should have been
and also
sent to the
being
nurse. He wasn't
aware of that.
sent. He wasn't sent to the nurse's office. Now I know a
Right,
lot of people have used that and made sure that children, if they're cut in school, and a lot of school nurses, and the school nurse said if Rory Staunton was sent to me, he'd be alive today. The school nurse that where Rory was in school. But
yes,
again, that's not bringing our son back.
right, no. And that's why the push has to happen. The push has to happen. It shouldn't depend on where you live. And I've told people this, it shouldn't depend on where you live and what hospital you wind up in as to whether or not you survive sepsis.
Or the colour of your skin, or your financial background, or anything else, or male, female, young, old. People came into this life to live, and someone shouldn't say, well, whatever the hospital is. And by the way, and I'm not getting into this, if I had heard of hospitals out in neighbourhoods, poor hospitals, who had sent police out to bring up someone who, when the bloods came back, they found out he or she was septic, and the police went to the door and brought them back in.
Yeah. My God. I mean, but the New York regulations, Rory's regulations, have saved, I think, forgive me,
In the first 4 years, almost 20,000 New Yorkers.
yes. And now you're taking this to the national level. You've
We
been
did.
taking it to the national level. Actually, a few years this started with the sepsis. A few years ago, it started with the Sepsis Act, correct?
Yes, well, what just to wind it back a small bit, what Orla and I did was we
Yes.
went into a number of other states to say, well, this has been done in New York. There's a template here. It's saving lives, and can't we do similar in other states? And was a big pushback from hospital groups and others. And we would find out, we would meet a senior official, and he or she would say, yeah, this can be done. And the next morning, well, we're going to set a committee. We'll put a committee together. And once you hear committee, you know someone's gotten to it. But in the meantime, based on Rory's regulations, we've in Jersey that 10 million people are covered in it. Rhode Island's got 1 million, Maryland 6 million, Illinois, Indiana, so it's all, and Maryland, all of those together is almost 60 million people covered, right? Now, there's many states we went to. We went right around the country, and was a pushback. And we then said, well, this can be done, because while we're waiting for the federal government to act, which sounds like an awful, I don't want to say cliche, but the federal government wasn't acting, and we were certainly pushing. And we finally met with Senator Schumer's staff at the time, and and Senator Schumer and others and said, listen, this is going to take too long. The number has gone from 270,000 to 350,000 a year that sepsis is killing. So with Senator Schumer's staff and other staff on both sides of the aisle, sepsis is an equal opportunity killer. It doesn't just kill Democrats or Republicans or liberals or conservatives. It's an equal opportunity killer. And so we had met, having Orla and I have been in some form of politics all our life, either state, federal, or other. So we kind of know there's no point. Years ago in politics, there used to be a thing called introduce a bill to nowhere, where a lobbyist would run a Congress member or a state member, introduce a bill, get some headlines, and no research, no homework. It's going nowhere, but someone got a few headlines out of it. Keep a lobbyist happy or keep someone. So we knew that we had to get legislation introduced, and the legislation had to be bipartisan, good chance of passing, and meaningful. And the first meaning of that is that it had to save lives. No talking shops or no committees or anything. It had to do something that would save lives. So we eventually, last year, got with Senator Schumer, Senator Collins, and other. We met most staffers from the HELP committee, HELP committee in the Senate. And by the way, although you will read a lot about the battling between the parties in Washington, on the HELP committee, we didn't find that with staffers and members. We had very good meetings and with people, because we had families from various constituencies who came in and met with the senator's office and said, we are looking at legislation. Senator Schumer and others and some professionals drew up some language. So both parties had input into it. It wasn't as if Senator Schumer's office went over to Senator Collins' office and said, here, will you co-sign this? Because then there's no one going to co-sign something that someone else drew up at this stage. So the two parties came together, worked for quite some time, and in the end, it was towards the end of last congressional area when it was introduced. And they all said at the time, well, let's introduce it as a trial balloon, let's it up in September last year. It'll get a couple of months, you can talk about it, you can introduce it, let's see what people think. So we did that, knowing that it was just going to be a trial balloon. So the Sepsis Act was introduced again recently, and it's S1929, S1929. And what we do like about it is there's no one has come out and said, we don't want that to pass. The interesting thing is, one group will say, well, it's killing 350,000 Americans, we must do something about it. Others might say, it's costing America $64 billion a year, we must do something about it. So, and you kind of say, oh, is the financial matter more important? But whatever their reason to sign on, we've had yet anyone to say, I don't like this piece of legislation because it's got this, this, or this. And that's what we had done all the homework beforehand and met the staffers and met them and say, here's what you're thinking about. If you want to run a line through any of it, let's do it now. No point putting a bill out there and then go around to show it to people. It's called doing the homework. And Senator Schumer's office, and we brought in families from other states. We flew them into Washington. We put them up in hotels. We paid for them. We got them to meet their Senate staffers and senators and said, here's what happened to my wife, or here's what happened to my child, or here's what happened, and here's why and here's what's been done in New York with Roy's regs, and here's what's not been done nationally. And we want you, Senator X, Y, or Z, to stop this killer in our midst. And you show that going from 270 to 350,000, and you're saying hand-wringing doesn't do anything. Action does.
No. Just talking about it over and over and over again does nothing. And I admire like the action and the determination that you've had in putting this forth. And it is bipartisan. I think people who don't go to Capitol Hill or see the things that we've seen understand that there's a lot of collaboration, as there should be. This side and that side. There needs to be healthy collaboration, and that's exactly what's going on with this legislation.
Yeah.
No one is pushing back against it or saying this isn't going to work. first
So,
of all, you've already seen it work in New York with Rory's
yeah.
regulations. You've seen what that can do. And now trying to bring it to the federal level. And, I totally skipped over, I just wanted to mention about End Sepsis itself, the nonprofit End Sepsis. Was that formed at the same time as Rory's regulations, prior to Rory's regulations? Like, how long have you been with the nonprofit? How long has that been in existence?
Well, Rory died in 2012, and we decided we had to do something, and we got working with New York State, and we're in the process of trauma, distraught, anger.
Lots of
You
anger.
fill in the words. They're all there, and anyone that's here watching this and taking this in knows what all the emotions are, and still going through them, questioning, why us? What can we do?
Disbelief.
Yes. Hoping it's a dream, hoping it's a nightmare, hoping you wake up, hoping it's not true. And then Jim Dwyer wrote the article in the New York Times exposing the whole thing. And one thing I forgot, Jackie, is that article was the most shared article ever in the New York Times website. The raw piece on Rory.
I read that.
And,
Yeah.
I remember that, and it's something I just want to, we got a note sometime later from a woman, and it came through 3 or 4 different ways, however it got back, but it was a woman, and she said, I'm living in Florida, and my child was in hospital, and we had no idea what was wrong with our child. My sister lives in New York, had read Jim Dwyer's article, and she called me up and she said, will you ask the doctors, could it be this thing called sepsis? And it was sepsis. And the woman said, your story in the New York Times saved our child's life. And Kathleen was sitting there. She said, well, it's a pity someone hadn't done that for Rory. Haunting words. And that's from a 10-year-old about her bigger brother. And out of that, we said, we need to do something. No one's done it. No one's doing anything. There's nothing for sepsis. It's 2012. And by the grace of whatever, this woman happened to read a story that Jim Dwyer, who's now dead, almost got Pulitzer Prize, won a Pulitzer, and other stories. And we put together the Rory Staunton Foundation. And our aim at the time was to make sure that people weren't buying coffins for their loved ones. Let me just run one little thing, and I keep going back and forth. One evening, Tuesday evening, Rory and I were going out to get some pizza. Rory was a big healthy kid, and we were talking about politics and the national politics, and we walked over to the pizza store, and they asked us what type of pizza did we want. The following Tuesday night, I walked into a funeral parlour on Queen's Boulevard. They asked me what type of coffin did I want. That's the realism.
And you make comparisons with those moments. Like you're thinking, hey, last week,
Yeah.
my loved one was alive.
Big guy. And by the way, just for the record,
Look at
good
the
old Rory had
weather.
2 slices of pizza, 2 different pizzas. He had them. That's our Rory. And we trotted away home, and we chatted about national, international, and everything, politics. And that man was to go on and do great things in life. He was destined to do great things.
Oh, he would
Where
have
would
been
he
a
be
diplomat
on
or something
everything?
similar for
Yeah.
sure.
He wouldn't have been quiet about anything. And we set it up, and then we went to expand. We became a 501c3, and we then did an upgrade on the name because we wanted the name to be the message. We want to end sepsis.
It's
We
like you
want to
said
end
in
people
the,
by. Go ahead, I'm sorry, I cut you off, Jackie.
oh, no, I'm sorry. It's like you said at the sepsis hearings back in 2023. You said you wanted us all to be out of a job.
I,
End sepsis. I
I'm on,
remember you saying that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We set up something that we want to be put out of business. I
Yes.
look forward to the day. I mean, we're going around the country and we're going to hearings and we're going to meetings. And you know, and people watching and listening knows, it's heart-wrenching. And you're absolutely distraught after his testimony. You've been there, you've done it. And yet someone asks you to speak at something. You have a moral I have and you have a moral obligation. If we can go to a hospital or go to a media event where we say, and someone hears what we're saying, and that saves their loved one, we have that obligation to do so. I believe that we don't have the right to take the fifth or anything else or say, I'm too tired, I'm too lonely, I cannot go
No.
through. And let me tell you, there's times I've given testimony and I come back and say, I can't do another one of those. And I'm sure you have also.
I watched you at the testimony you gave down at Washington MedStar Hospital, and that entire room was emotionally wiped. And it's hard, and advocacy is hard work, and it's draining, and you relive it all the time. But it's like you said, that then you hear from people. I was shopping in Costco on a Saturday when I got a call from a woman who had attended one of my sepsis talks that I give here in the community. Her father was sick with a kidney stone. He lived in Florida. Her sister lived nearby and was calling my friend who had attended my talk and talking about these symptoms that their father was experiencing, and the hospital had sent him home.
Yeah.
It's just a kidney stone. And I'll always remember that woman asking me on the phone as I'm shopping in Costco, and she said, Jackie, this sounds like what you were talking about, sounds like sepsis. What should I do? And I referred her also to a nurse friend who had presented with me that day, and I said, get him back to the hospital, don't take no for an answer, have them run these tests. And sure enough, I found out the next day she did let me know that her father had sepsis. But it's those moments, Ciaran, where people reach out on wild times and wild days, and you could just be shopping or driving down the road and someone will call you and say, hey, I heard what you said and it saved my life, or it saved my loved one's life.
It's also, you and I and Orla and Kathleen, we don't have the luxury of saying, well, we're an active organisation and we're doing something. We're here we have two things that you and I, and we have two things: we organise, save lives. Three things: go out of business. But
Yeah.
what we've had to do, I mean, like, we had our hearings on Capitol Hill in 2013, 2014, United States Senate, covered on TV. Chairman Harkin was a wonderful man, Senator Tom Harkin, and both sides came down talking to us. We went from that many years to CDC saying we have no money. So we got 20 million, or we got some millions a number of years ago. In the first time ever, there's a line item with funding for sepsis. A line item that we had to knock this, that, and the other to get. We got it. And then in the national budget, the money went directly to CDC, CMS, and AHRQ, right? So then you're going saying, we were on the TV, we did the media, we went on with Dr. Oz, we were on People, we were on the various Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, People magazine, and you're just continuously saying, why haven't you covered this? Why haven't you written about this? And that
Oh,
is,
it's hard. It's
but
hard to
you
get
know,
even to print.
you have tried pitching. I shouldn't say tried
I've been
pitching, but you,
fighting. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you're calling someone up and you're saying you're the medical editor, and since I first contacted you 4 years ago about this issue, um, a million and a half Americans have died, but you've never written about anything. Is there any reason? And you just got to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and that is exhausting. And when someone says, well, we're going to Capitol Hill and we're thinking about going to that, wait a minute. If you're going to Capitol Hill, and I mean this to everyone watching, we now have a golden opportunity to change sepsis in America as we know it. We don't know when again we will get the Schumers, the Collinses, and everyone that we have access to, because down the line at some stage you may not have a Senator Schumer who are a Stauntons you'll have access to. You may not have a Senator Collins, and people are working together. This is all now queued up. What we need is everyone working together. If you're going to Capitol Hill, you need to be asking about S1929. If sepsis comes up, that has to be Senator or Congress, whatever it is, what are you doing on S1929? Because S1929 is the one to put an end to sepsis deaths in America as we know it. So if you're going up there, or anyone you know is going up there, or you know a senator, a congress member, or anything else, it's a fair question to ask anyone. What are you doing about this piece of legislation? S1929. It will save millions of Americans' lives and put a fortune into CDC's work in it.
Is it like Rory's regulations, the Sepsis Act? Explain so that everyone knows what it will do on a national level.
Well, I think on the national level, what it's going to do, it's going to empower, we say CDC at the moment did a lot of great work on antibiotic movements and that in the hospitals, and now they're starting to do sepsis stewardship in the hospitals, for want of a better word, right? So to do that, they have to get the money from Congress. So they want to roll out a big initiative across America. This is what we've all been waiting for. CDC is on the ball. Now, I have spent the last half an hour criticizing them and attacking them, but I always have to say, give people credit where it's due. They have come a long way, and they are totally on the ball. Now, we know, and we're not going to get into the national politics and the cuts and whatever else is going on at the moment, but we do know CDC has everything in place. I won't say if, I'm an optimist. When S1929 passes, it's passed forever. And we will then see CDC getting the money that they are going to get, and other agencies. The war will start on sepsis with the passing of S1920. I think that's the simplest way I could put it. The war on sepsis in the United States, as we know it, will have begun the day S1929 passes.
And this will help hospitals nationally, no matter where they're located.
Our big
get
problem.
Ready and,
Sorry. Yeah.
Would this help hospitals nationally to get ready, to gear up, to, as you said, to catch sepsis at the front door?
Yes. Because if you go into hospital in Cambridge, Massachusetts, or San Jose, California, with a pain in your chest, they treat you the same way. They know what to look for. They're looking for a heart attack.
Heart attack, right.
If you go in Tampa, or you go in Seattle with other issues and you're losing your voice and there's powerless, they'll say they look for a stroke.
Yes.
We want that same standard across all American hospitals for sepsis. No big deal? No big deal.
Right. And that's
Why
a
not?
perfect analogy. Ciaran, that's the perfect analogy. People know what to look for no matter what hospital you wind up in. If you have a heart attack, people know what to look for if you have signs of a stroke. People need to know, all hospitals need to know what to look for when you have signs of sepsis.
Yes.
Or at the very, starting with the source of sepsis is always an infection. And infections should be treated as suspect for sepsis.
Well,
And you don't have much time. You're right, it's got to start at the front door.
it has to start.
Quickly.
Yeah. And it is. I mean, it shouldn't be. I mean, like, if you went to any hospital in New York or in the States or Illinois or any of those, they know going from any hospital has a sepsis program. Well, so let's do it across America. But because I don't want to even get into the carry on in Washington over the years and trying to get someone to put money into a budget, and people with $1 billion budgets had no money to go after sepsis and no money to do anything. When I say to you that we never got to a door that we didn't have to knock down, I am not. That is not an over exaggeration.
And people need to understand that too, that, the agencies do work. It does, but getting your foot in the door requires nonstop persistence.
And changing, you
have-
see, someone changing, you see, to change course, they say, well, here's how this big ship runs, and all is fine. And then you come in and you're saying, well, wait a minute now, something's not fine. Well, I'm not going to look for changes because the guy before me didn't, or the woman before me didn't make changes. And to make changes, I'll have to get a budget and I'll have to take out a couple of $1 million out of here and change it into here. I'll have to justify that, so let's pass it on. And that's, we go back to Ryan White and AIDS, and we go back to those various wonderful people, Arthur Ashe and AIDS, or you look at the people over the years and what Elizabeth Taylor did with we didn't have an Elizabeth Taylor. We didn't have an Arthur Ashe. Unfortunately, we had a similar to Ryan White, but we never got that kind of fame. I mean, those were wonderful people who paid with their lives, or Arthur Ashe and AIDS. And Elizabeth Taylor taking up the thing and insisting, and Dr. Edwin Coop and the Reagan administration backing him up, saying, here's what we must do. But brave leaders took brave steps.
Yes.
I mean, profiles in courage for people and persistence. Now, we're trying to do that. There's Orla and I in a committee. We raise some funds. We bring families in because we always say, bring a person to meet with a legislator, or bringing them, but not for the sake of a meeting. I've always said in my 40 or 50 years in politics, don't go to someone for the sake of a go-to, right? If there's an ask, if there's something can be done, but make sure the homework is done beforehand. And before we introduced S1929, we had to know the committees, we had to know the people involved, and it had to be bipartisan. And all groups, whatever organization they're watching, I want them to join with us. This isn't about egos or names or anything else. You and I have graveyards. There's no egos involved here. But whoever's going to Capitol Hill, or whoever they're going, we all need to be. There's an Irish expression called Trína Céile, right, which means all together. It's the joining of the hands like that. Everyone needs to be doing it this coming fall, and this everything. Every office, whatever personalities or whatever people have got involved, you know what? There's no personality involved when you're looking at your child's headstone. No. That's what we have to prevent the next child, the next grandchild, and we will be haunted. And we and whoever is out there will be haunted if we don't put whatever differences are between any groups or anyone out there, and don't say, this is the transportation truck that we can ride to the White House. By the way, speaking of the White House, we hammered on the White House door. I mean, it's a physical look on that. And finally, last year, we got the White House to have their first ever sepsis event. Because we kept saying, you had AIDS event.
That was awesome.
And they asked Orla. It was awesome. And they asked Orla and they asked End Sepsis to formally open it, to formally unveil it. Which was nice. And they were wonderful people. And it was getting late in the year. And we said to them, regardless of what happens, do the first one. We'll push for the second one. But someone has to do the first one, because we tried it with the Obama administration and the other administrations. And we said, you've had White House conferences on everything out there. Every disease, every sickness, everything out there. You've never had anything on sepsis. Tell us why.
Right.
And
And we
finally
need it.
last
We
year,
need it.
with the things were happening, and we got a call and says, listen, we want to do a sepsis event. And that was from literally Orla and I and Kathleen and whatever. I know this is kicking and hammering and knocking on the door of the White House since 2012, saying, why are you not doing anything about this? And when we were at the White House at various other events and other things, we kept saying, why isn't there anything going? I asked Vice President Biden on a number of occasions. I was at the State of the Union when I actually got President Obama afterwards, and I said, our son, Congressman Crowley introduced us, and I said, we need a White House event on sepsis. So you never miss an opportunity to bring up
Right.
this, as you well know. But we will miss an opportunity if we don't get this legislation out and passed. I don't care who signs on. You and I will be always meeting and crying for the rest of our lives. But we'll cry twice as much, and so will people who are kind of, if they say, well, not now, we'll wait for another time at the right time. There's a great old saying, when the iron is red is the time to hit it. It goes back to when a blacksmith was making horseshoes for a horse. The iron is now red, the time is ripe, and it's never the wrong time to do the right thing. And I follow that with there's one is, evil succeeds when good people do nothing. Evil is killing 350,000 Americans a year. Good people are watching and listening to us today. We want them to join you and I and Orla and everyone and do this.
Yes, how can people get involved? Like, there is strength in numbers. You're
Yes.
absolutely 100% there. How can people get involved?
People can go on, people can come onto our website. They can contact us. By the way, if you want, my number is 917-251-0739. I know this sounds like a sales
And
pitch, but it's
I will put that in the description
917
box as well.
2510739. And what we want is people from every state to make contact with us if need be, make contact with their senator for starting, if they've had sepsis, if they're involved in organizations, other organizations, get that organization to say, Sepsis Alliance actually, and I reached out to Tom the other week, I said I must talk to him. They welcome the legislation, which is a great job. The Hospital Associations of America has welcomed the legislation, but now we're going from the welcoming to the pushing. And the hospital, the
Now starts that
Sepsis Alliance
uphill
ourselves,
push.
yes, because everyone said it's welcomed and everyone's statements were the right things, and the right thing to do is what needs to be done next is, okay, strategizing is what people sometimes do when they're not doing work, right? We
Yes.
need to work
Yes.
and strategize. One is
Yes.
not an alternative for the other. It's like, you remember years ago, let's set up a committee, and whenever I hear committee, okay, well that's yeah, that's a political one. Join in. People who can't can. I hate looking for money because I think it's awful always looking for money. But we paid for everyone's flight last year. Our day on Capitol Hill last year with flights and hotels and all that cost almost $40,000 because
Right.
people were very poor. We paid for their flights. We wanted them to meet their congressman, their senator, bring their families, and it's very, very difficult, as you well know, to say to
Yes.
someone, "Will you come to Washington?"
And it's expensive.
It's
And a lot of
expensive.
survivors, for example, are waiting on things like kidney transplants or they're amputees, and they have all of these additional expenses thanks to
Yes.
sepsis. And it really it could put you in the poorhouse. Easy.
The surviving it, the sepsis survivors have really didn't get even any acknowledgement up until in recent years, and the fact that it can come back to them, and sepsis can return to them. And we've had a number of people who've testified with us, and sometimes you call and say, listen, I'm not fit to travel. I know that feeling. I know the feeling when you thought, I don't want to get another Amtrak to Manhattan or to DC. I don't want to meet another. I don't want to tell my story another time. I don't want to do this interview. We don't have that luxury, unfortunately. I don't, neither Orla or I or Kathleen would let each other say no, because we know, not that we want to, but as you know, there are times when do I have to get up out of bed? Do I have to put one foot in front of the other for the rest of this day? Taking it from that to say, do I have to spend 3 nights in a motel in Washington and meet with staffers and tell my story? And every time you tell that story, you sit down and you're absolutely wiped out.
It's draining. It's so draining, and it's so exhausting.
Not to mention the trauma.
Right.
As you and plenty of people here who are watching today, and I mean, all we can do is give each other big hugs over the mail or anything else, but that's all we can do to each other, is give each other big hugs and try and prevent more people joining our awful club.
Do you, that was one thing I did want to ask about resources, as we discussed even prior to recording this episode, that, you know, losing a child is one of the most horrific things ever. There's nothing worse on this planet. And are there resources for people who are listening, watching? Do you, Orla, know of any resources or things that helped you in the aftermath?
Well, Jackie, you and I and Orla and other people watching, I wish just we could see them all as they're watching and give one big hug and reach out there. Know that life will never be the same again. And as I say, it starts from there and goes downhill, right? Meeting other parents who have lost a child can be helpful, because you and I are complete strangers on every other aspect, and yet we have a bond that we'll have for the rest of our life. And we know nothing about each other's other background, ethnic backgrounds, whatever it may be, but we can sit in each other's company for hours. That's what that does for us. That's what it does. By the way, and we will go, time is not a good healer. People who have not buried their children will tell you time's a healer, or there's good days and bad days. There's only 2 types of days we will have, is bad days and bloody awful days. They're the 2 type of days you and I will have, and Orla will have, and others. Rory should and could be alive today. Our loved one should and could be alive today. Getting up is, I have to live another day with this. Then we have other children. We have Kathleen. We cannot say, okay, we're switching off the lights, we're not getting up again. We had to go to the basketball games. We have to cheer. We have to meet people. We have to get out there. We have to travel. You have to cheer at basketball games. But putting one front of the other, I've gone back many times, and the unnaturalness, if there's such a word, of where you and I are in Orla, is there is no word for what we are. And I've asked people from all different persuasions, from Yiddish, Arabic, Gaelic, everything. There is no word for parents who bury a child. When some person asks you what you are, if one buries their wife or husband, they're a widow or a widower. If we bury our parents, we're an orphan. You can say I'm an orphan, I'm a widow, I'm a widower. There is no word for one, because it's unnatural. That's why there's no word anywhere. It's unnatural for the elder to bury their youth first. It is unnatural for parents to buy coffins for their children. So there is no word as ever. So when someone asks you about your children or asks me about my children, I talk along and don't get into it. I cannot say, well, I'm an ex. Then they'll understand I've buried a child. It's never been created. And we go back to meeting each other, you and I, or meeting families wherever we are. That to me was, I suppose I nearly say helpful, but that's as much as that we can have a conversation, and sometimes we can just sit there in each other's company. You and I can say to each other, how was your day? And we understand that both of us are having a bloody awful day, and we'll always have, but we can still have that conversation. And when you were telling me about your awful day, I'm not looking over your shoulder to see if there's someone else around, as people do. And I also say is that when people start retelling the stories, as you and I and others will do, I remember the day Rory did this or did that or whatever he did. And we'll always talk about our children for as long as we go, and those memories will always be there. People who haven't buried their child will start getting fed up listening to the stories. They may not say that.
Squirming.
The question is meeting people who have buried their loved ones. That awful club is better. And I don't say help, it's better than not meeting anyone.
Yeah. Right. Because there is an
If that makes any
understanding.
sense. Yes.
Absolutely.
That's yeah. There is an understanding. Without an explanation, there's an understanding. You don't need to explain. You live in my shoes, I live in your shoes, or head, or whatever analogies we want.
And we don't need, like, nothing even needs to be said.
No, I said that
just
you could
the
sit
look.
beside each other. You could just sit there and say nothing.
Yeah.
Have your cup of tea and say very little. Because it's you look, it's a one script we're reading. We were robbed in the most shamefully despicable way in life. We were robbed of the most precious. Not something as silly as jewelry or money or houses or property. Something the most precious, the irreplaceable, and the preventable.
Right. Absolutely. And that's why we do what we do. That's why. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah. I feel that we have an obligation to stop this killer, to arrest this killer now. You and I and everyone watching this, we have an obligation not to have someone else's children or grandchildren still buying coffins for children with sepsis, because this great country of ours has arrested all the other killers and maybe not got them fully, but has certainly brought them well down to the numbers, and our killer is going up and up and up and up. Our obligation
And
is to grab
people,
the
and
moment, seize the moment now.
pediatrics.
Yeah,
Right.
seize the moment. We now have the opportunity to seize the moment, because our conscience, if we miss this opportunity, our conscience won't be good to us, because it'll say, well, ours will say, listen, maybe we could have worked harder. Maybe. Maybes are no good. Facts are what count. We have it in place. Let's close the bill. And when I want to do this, and by the way, I want to say thank you for your energy for doing this, because energy isn't easy come by for any of us. Now, we get up and do what we do, and we take the calls and we do the meetings. You've got to go up and you've got to put this all together, cut it down, put it out there, and you are spreading the message. I think what you're doing is very admirable and very commendable.
Well, thank you, Ciaran. I really appreciate that. Thank you. I just want to give rise to all of our voices, to put it out there, to have this YouTube channel just catch on. I'm literally building the plane as I'm flying. A friend of mine, someone also
I like
in
the
our sepsis
plane
community
analogy.
mentioned that.
I like the
Yeah.
plane analogy because Rory wants to be a pilot, so there you go. So I like the plane.
I didn't come up with that one on my own. Someone you and I both know, Clayton Anderson, had come up with that, and he told me that about
Well,
the work that he's doing, and I was like, I like that, and I'm going to keep, I'm going to use that, and that's what this whole podcast series is about, and my hope is, well, I know through my own determination and my own gut feeling, this channel is going to take off. More and more people are finding it, they're discovering it, they're listening in and going, oh my God, I know someone, I lost somebody to sepsis, and then they're learning about organizations like yours and Sepsis Alliance, and they're figuring out that, hey, there's actually something being done about this, or people are trying to do something about it, and I want to join with that effort. And that's my hope, is that we build that coalition. Together we are all stronger. The more
Tríla
of
Céile,
us.
Tríla Céile.
Yes.
It's like that. You see, when the hands join like that, nothing will pull it apart. And you mentioned Clayton Anderson, and what a wonderful gentleman. And there was a beautiful young Crystal, robbed from us, absolutely robbed from us. And we could go on and I don't want to, I usually don't want to mention, but what a fantastic gentleman. And Crystal and the children and everything. And they just got hammered, absolutely hammered. And we can go up and down state by state with all the names. But I think if there was ever a message, it should be do something. Don't do nothing. And that is the big issue, is to join up and do something, and do it now. Because remember, tomorrow doesn't come. You remember that thing you were going to do tomorrow, when that was yesterday, but you didn't get around to it because tomorrow is tomorrow and we're in today. And we need everyone out there, and we need everyone listening, watching. And, my mother used to have a great saying, always ask a busy person to do something, because an idle person doesn't have time. So whoever's busy on committees and involved in other things, we want them come on board.
They're the
Because,
ones who are getting things done.
yes, they get it done. Because they don't have
And
time.
Sepsis Awareness Month is coming this, everybody listening, be aware. Yes, we have a month. It's in September. We work all year long, but we go especially hard, I like to say, in September.
We work all year long, and we're haunted all year long.
Yeah. That never goes away. You can't walk away from it. I can't walk, you can't walk away. It's always with you. It's like a companion that you never wanted.
Oh, God, no. I wouldn't wish this on the most evil people out there. You wouldn't want anyone to go there, no matter how bad they are, to go through what you and I and Orla and Kathleen and people we know and Clayton and others have gone through. Oh, it's like, and that's why I'm adamant that we need to push this over the top in arresting it. And I just got re-elected to the board of the Global Sepsis Alliance, and we're an international body from all over the world. And I just got re-elected for yesterday. And when I spoke, I gave the keynote to their address 2 years ago in Germany, and we had 172 countries now had signed and were on board that day listening. That's where it has grown from. And as bad and all as we are here, by the way, is that we in the United States and in New York upwards lead the world on sepsis activity, on sepsis awareness, on sepsis action. And it is the largest killer of children in the world. So you'd imagine that pitch in itself would say to people, what is this that's killing? But we're going to arrest it. I mean, if you had a wanted poster in the post office with sepsis on it, killer in your midst, killing 350,000, killing a large number of people every day, there would be posses and there would be press conferences and say, we need to kill this person before he or she kills more people.
Right. Awareness and education works. Awareness on behalf of us, just general population, and awareness on behalf of medical providers.
And protocols on behalf of hospitals.
And the protocols, yes. Congratulations, by the way, on being reelected onto the board. The Global Sepsis Alliance is amazing. That's an amazing group.
Absolutely. Tex and all the guys, they're brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
I was just about to ask, Tex is still on it as well.
Yes, we re-elected him chairman yesterday for another 3 years. So it was one of these great things where he didn't have an opportunity to say no. It was unanimous that he should be re-elected. And then we asked him if he wanted the job.
He's a great person. Everyone on that board is great, wonderful people, and you're doing amazing work. And I firmly believe we're going to start to see real progress, because I've never met a group of dedicated people such as yourself and so many others that we're not going to stop. We're going to keep going. We can't get tired. We can't quit. We have to keep going. And with that,
We're not giving up.
right.
You know, there's no white flag in our background, neither Orla or myself. There's no white flag in our family genes.
Yeah. Same here. I'm going to keep going. And thank you so much, Ciaran, for being on. Give Orla all my best, as always. And I will include links in the description box to End Sepsis and the bill,
Thank you very much.
Rory's regulations, the Times article. It'll all be in the description box so that people
Thank you.
can read for themselves and, get a little bit more information and know how to help us and join in the fight.
Our name is End Sepsis, and our motto is to end sepsis. So listen, Jackie, big hug, and God bless you. Please keep up the enormous, brilliant, and inspirational work you are doing.
Thank you, Ciaran. And same to you. Thank you so much for being
God
here
bless.
today, and thank you to my listeners.
Take care. God bless to everyone out there. Call me or email me, or if there's anything we can do. Please reach out to us.
Yes.
You're not alone.